Welcome back to the show, everybody. On today's episode, we have a very special guest, Justin Walsh. Justin, how you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you for taking the time to join us today to share a little bit about yourself. I'd like to get started by asking you to introduce yourself and telling us a little bit of what you do, please.
Yes, absolutely. My name is Justin Walsh. I'm 54 years old, and I live in the very top northeastern county of the Texas Panhandle. I live in a rural community. In fact, Lipscomb County only has, I think, a little over 3 people per square mile, and so that makes it one of the most rural places that we have in the United States anymore. I live in a town of 400 people, and at this point in my life, I've decided to pursue a late career in mental health. I am pursuing a degree at West Texas A&M University, and I'll be graduating at the end of this year. A degree that will enable me to become licensed in the state of Texas as a licensed professional counselor. So right now, I'm in an internship and seeing some clients and learning more about the practice. I'm a dad. I'm a father. I co-parent 2 young boys, age 7 and 10. He's just about ready to be 11. So that's a lot. That keeps me busy just with those things alone.
Oh yeah, I bet. Just wow. And I mean, so many threads to pull on there. I mean, you mentioned 3 people per square mile. Like that is super remote, I think. Yeah, and then the kiddos and then your new practice. I like to ask, who do you help the most in your practice?
Well, at this point, I've really been seeing a lot of children, kids aged from 4 years old all the way up to maybe 14 or 16. And it's not necessarily a population that I identified as something I wanted to specialize in. I kind of have a wide view on it where I absolutely believe in, you know, directing my future and striving towards things that I want to bring into my life. But on the other hand, I also am open to seeing what the world brings to me, what comes to me, and finding that place, where I can fit in and serve a population. And just because of that, I've noticed in my life, I substitute teach at our local school district here, and almost always I'm with pre-K kids up to maybe the 4th grade. I'm not sure why, but it's just maybe that's where I fit in the best. And then I also tutor part-time. That's kind of a side gig. Once again, it seems to be that young age range. And now in my internship, without stating to my supervisor, that I was seeking any one population, I was just remaining open. I'm just finding myself working with all of these kids. I have some 4-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 12, 14-year-olds. And so I'm really serving a lot of children, which has been really fun and challenging and interesting.
Yeah, wow, that is fascinating, and it's also really fascinating that it just happens, right? Like you're not
Right.
really thinking it out, and things are just kind of falling into place. And
Sure.
wow, I don't know if that is a sign from somewhere or some.
It must be. That's kind
Yeah,
of the way I'm taking it. So I'm going with it, right?
yeah,
I mean, I
yeah,
definitely want to work with adults and other populations, but for now, this is what my experience is, and so I'm just going with it.
yeah, yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Justin, what are some of the challenges or concerns that your clients, in this case being mostly kids, present with?
Oh, yeah. Well, unfortunately, I'm seeing a lot of kids who have been abused, either physically, sexually, or through neglect. That's a big one. And then there's also kids that have experienced a lot of traumatic stress. I mean, any of those conditions that I just mentioned, produce traumatic stress for children. There's a little bit of conduct disorders, behavioral issues, parents who maybe want to incorporate more of a psychoeducational component about, uh, getting ahead of potential issues early on, which I think is great. Therapy definitely can take on the psychoeducational component where you can work with a young person and help them to identify the interaction between thoughts, behaviors, emotions, introduce coping skills, all sorts of, really important things that aren't always readily presented to children. And so I think that, being a counselor and being a therapist, working with kids who, are having conduct disorders, behavioral type things, presenting them with that kind of information is really meaningful. It's important.
Yeah, that's awesome, Justin. How do you ensure that you're a right fit for the client and that they are a right fit for you?
Well, I think it all comes down to the relationship and, the rapport that is established. Therapy is defined as the relationship between the counselor and the client. It's a contractual relationship, and it's also a one-way relationship, whereas a counselor, I'm there to support the client as they are in the here and now. And I'm not expecting anything back from that client. I'm simply there to be there for them, to experience the present moment with them, and hopefully allow them the tools, that will be useful for them to work through their problems or whatever difficulty they're having. And so establishing the right fit, I think, comes down to the relationship. If the relationship can be established in a way that safety, trust, communication are all present, then that's a success, and that's a good fit. If for whatever reason, that's difficult to attain, then there has to be a problem, and there'd be different ways to address that problem. But I think the relationship is how you determine fit or not.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now,
Yeah.
how do you establish that, Justin? Is it via consultation call maybe? Do you do like a Zoom meeting with a potential client?
Well, that's something that as an intern, I have not fully explored doing the consultations, pre first session. Usually within the private practice in which I'm interning, the clients are complete an intake assessment, usually online, where in my case, working with the children, the parents will complete a questionnaire and provide some different information about the issues at hand and so forth. And then when that is completed and the initial session is set up, then I simply am there for the client, meet the client, and we go from there. That first session is kind of where we establish rapport and kind of start to develop that relationship.
Got it. That makes sense. So it sounds
Yeah,
like if a parent of a kiddo that needs help wants to reach out, they'll call the practice, and the practice, maybe a client care coordinator or an office manager will kind of address all the paperwork that's required. And when all of that is situated, then they'll refer that client over to you in your caseload. Is that just kind of how it works?
yes, that's currently the situation that I'm in now.
Got it.
Now, as far as when I develop into, I'm planning on developing a private practice in my community, and when I do that, then there's definitely going to be some steps involved where I'm going to need to kind of facilitate that process. But as of yet, I haven't quite developed that process yet, but I will.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, so Justin, you mentioned how you establish fit, and that is by making sure that the relationship is,
yeah.
and all the great things that you mentioned, and that currently where you're located, there is a system set up to make sure that clients get everything filled out properly before they start working with you. I like to switch gears a little bit and ask about your
Sure.
specialty. There's a lot of specialties out there like EMDR, brain spotting, CBT,
Sure.
on and on and on, right? And
Yeah.
I'd like to ask what your specialty is, and if you can kind of explain that in simple terms.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. You're right. There are so many specialties out there, and uh, you know, so many different ways to access change and to facilitate change for clients. At this point in my development, I'm kind of a generalist. I would take an integrative approach. I definitely have things that appeal to me. For example, I'm attracted to what is known as reality therapy. And basically, if you want to sum up reality therapy, you could do it in one sentence, which would be are is what you're doing right now helping you to go where you want to be? It just kind of it's pretty simple, and I think that's a benefit a lot of times is not to overcomplicate things. So it kind of has that simple aspect to it. Or what are you doing right now? Is this helping you to get where you want to be? And if not, then why not? And why are you doing these things that are unhelpful for you? So I like that. I think in the landscape that we now inhabit as counselors and therapists is, with third-party paying systems and the influence of insurance in the business, something like solution focused brief therapy is also very helpful because you can go in and you can enable change in a client in a short period of time. Whereas contrasted with something like the psychodynamic approach, like the typical Sigmund Freud sit down on the couch and engage in a years long process of self exploration, that doesn't necessarily work very well with third party paying systems who want to see treatment goals, who want to see progress made, and who want to see clients enter therapy and exit therapy. And so with something with solution focused brief therapy, it allows a counselor to kind of get in, grab at the important stuff, give it to the client, uh, and kind of help them to make quick changes and to solve the problems that they're working with in their lives. And so I think that's very appealing. I like solution focused brief therapy. Person centered therapy is quite amazing. I think because you're really just allowing the person to exist as they are at the present moment, no judgment. You have the unconditional positive regard. You're exhibiting empathy for them, and you're basically showing up completely present and intent on that person, which is something that uh, we really don't get in life in a lot of places other than the therapeutic relationship, where you have someone who is just completely focused and intent on you and is there to help that person and to take them as they are. So there's a lot of things. You can't get away from cognitive behavioral stuff. I mean, it's so useful and it's so practical. I really like that as well, where you can talk about thoughts, behaviors, and emotions and how they work and changing perceptions about things. That's cognitive behavioral is kind of a gold standard at this point in the evolution of therapeutic practices. So I could talk about this quite a bit because they're all fascinating, but those are some of the things that I'm interested in.
Yeah, that's awesome, Justin, and thank you for sharing that. Some therapists are a little more direct, right? They're very goal driven and they want to get to that goal as quickly as possible. And
Yeah.
others are a lot more laid back. They kind of let the client lead. Others involve humor. Some, do a little self disclosure. Others don't. They say the client and me are separate. They don't need to know anything about, right? So I'm just kind of curious, how would you describe your style in session?
Yeah. Well, I'm developing that. I know that I have inherent inborn characteristics about my personality, which are strengths and that I bring into session, but I'm also exploring how it all fits together because frankly, something like person-centered, being a person-centered, non-directive type of therapist, it doesn't necessarily fit extremely well with something like cognitive behavioral, where you're establishing goals, you're providing psychoeducation, you're taking a very directive route, and so there's kind of this interplay between uh, the person-centered approach, which is non-directive, and then kind of popping back over to a cognitive behavioral approach, which is, oh, let me show you this graph about, it could be anything, the stop technique to behavioral modification or whichever it is, in taking a more directive approach. So there's kind of this interplay that I'm exploring, going from one to the other. And the same is true for play therapy as well. Play therapy, which I'm practicing attempting to practice with a lot of my younger clients is very non-directive, but at the same time, uh, I have to take into consideration, why the parents brought this child to therapy in the first place, and then also treatment goals, which are in place within the first or second session. So there's kind of the interplay of non-directive towards directive, and I think I'm still kind of mastering that process where I can kind of go from one to the other in a fluid and kind of graceful way. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. Yeah, and I share that sentiment because that is an art, and it definitely
Sure.
takes some time to develop. How to kind of gauge what's going to serve the client good in that moment because it can
Yeah.
vary by day, and so I really appreciate that you kind of approach that style, so to speak, with nuance, and
Yeah.
making sure that you develop that in a way that serves the client. So, thanks for sharing that, Justin.
Sure.
I like to ask. So let's say a client shows up, they do a consultation, they seem to be a good fit, they do the first session, and they start working with you. What does progress look like?
Well, in a very practical sense, progress looks like attaining the treatment goals. So I typically like to form at least three major treatment goals. And then within those three treatment goals, there's usually three additional subsets, specific areas to work on. And so, frankly, progress looks like, developing steps, taking action, and measuring progress towards those treatment goals. Again, to go back to the directive to the non-directive approach, with something like cognitive behavioral therapy, that's going to be quite specific. You might actually use an assessment to measure progress. Uh, I'm not absolutely certain that I'm going to be an adherent of the cognitive behavioral approach to that extent. I think that I certainly will in certain circumstances, but I'm not sure if I'm going to habituate that in my practice. Whereas, if we go to more of the person-centered approach, that it would be more of a informal assessment about, my judgment of how the client is doing, and of course their own judgment, their a self-evaluation. So I think those are a few of the ways to measure progress and know uh, how far we've come along the way.
Yeah, that's awesome, Justin. And so as a client continues their journey with you and they start making meaningful progress, how do you know that it's maybe time to say graduate, if that's an appropriate term, or terminate therapy?
Well, again, typically it's attainment of treatment goals is really what it is. Termination of the counseling relationship of therapy is I think that's a very important yet sometimes neglected aspect of the process. Um, Sometimes I feel like as counselors, and again, I'm kind of at my place where I'm at in my development. I have a lot to learn about this, but yet I feel like sometimes as counselors, in general, we're not as good at terminating as we should be, and sometimes we can linger in counseling.
Yeah, thanks for that, Justin, because that resonates with me a lot because I think I agree with you in many ways that termination of therapy is something that I think a lot of clinicians may not place a whole lot of emphasis on. And I think there are ways to really maybe be more timely with termination, but then also maybe have a more powerful termination, maybe having like a closing ritual or some kind of ceremony, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I'll share one quick story. I was working with a client, a kiddo, 9 years old, and we did maybe like 7 or 8 sessions, and so it was pretty quick. But at the end, we did a whole little graduation ceremony where I printed off a certificate, put his name on it, and I collaborated with him and obviously with the parents, make sure it was okay with them. And they were like, absolutely, do it. And so he came up with his own nickname, and we wrote a little blurb, and it was really nice, well done. It cost me like $1 or $2 to print
Oh,
from
that's
State,
great.
and I read it to him in the termination session, and he loved it. The parents loved it, but that's I think something that I was alluding to is perhaps involving some of those little rituals when we're terminating clients. And that's probably a topic for a whole nother podcast, but
Absolutely.
I resonate with that a lot, Justin.
I love
Um,
that idea. Great job.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for that, Justin. I wonder if somebody is nervous about, reaching out to you. Maybe they're liking what you're saying, they're liking your style, they're liking how you present yourself, but they're just reluctant to reach out. Maybe because they've never worked with a therapist before. Maybe because
Yeah.
the field is so new and there's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
What would you want them to hear, sir?
Well, I think I'd want them to know and understand that, this is something that has been researched, and there's something called the trans-theoretical model, or the stages of change model. And according to this theoretical stage theory, uh, being reluctant to engage in change is normal. There's a process. This would be the second stage in that, where you might identify that you're ready to make the change. Well, not ready, but thinking about becoming ready, that you identify something that you want to work on, but there's still some reluctance there. You're not quite ready to make the call, to book the session, and that's okay. That's okay. Just work through it, process, get to the point when you're ready to make the call. And I think it might be helpful to realize that there's a stigma that exists in seeking help, but you don't have to like buy into that stigma. A therapist is simply there for you, and to help you is completely confidential. There's no judgment attached to it. It's a safe place. And when a person is ready to seek counseling and to have a therapist and to work through some issues and to make some change, then there are mental health professionals that are ready to meet you there and begin the process.
Yeah, great suggestion, and I really like that a lot, Justin. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thanks for that, Justin. I like to switch gears a little bit and ask a little bit about you. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
Great. Well, my first question is, what led you to choose the field of therapy out of all the fields out there you could have picked?
Well, it pretty much aligns with my values. At this point in my life, I've recently reassessed a lot of my personal values, and very high on the list is wanting to help people. Uh, a second value is directed towards fatherhood, about being the best dad that I can be to my kids. And so those two values kind of are met equally in becoming a counselor. I can establish a private practice, or even potentially work in community mental health and be remunerated for my services, thereby providing financial stability for my family, which is an important part of being a parent, while at the same time taking an approach where I'm going to be out there helping people, which is extremely important. I think that's probably the most frequently cited reason why people get into this, is that they want to help people. So for me, it was kind of the dual fold, the dual aspect of it. So it was the financial aspect, with also partnered with helping people. And so that's kind of how I arrived here.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Justin. I really appreciate you disclosing a little bit about your motivation for this field, and
Yeah.
I think it's awesome, man. I think it's really cool that it's in line with their values, and that yeah. I mean, I feel like there's no greater privilege than being paid to help people. I mean, it's just like the
Yeah.
best of both worlds.
Yeah, definitely. I
Yes, sir.
agree.
Justin, I'd like to ask, how do you spend your time outside of the office?
Oh, well, right now, being a graduate student and being a parent, as mentioned previously, I co-parent, and so I have my kids every other week. So basically, between, graduate studies, a lot of reading, a lot of paper writing, and a lot of preparing for my clients, and, that type of stuff. There's not a lot of extra time, but the things that we do enjoy are usually focused on the family type stuff. Like we recently took a trip to the zoo, had a trip to the big city, Oklahoma City, back over the way. As I mentioned, my small town is very rural. So we, anytime we want to go do something kind of special, we usually tend to have to go to Amarillo or Oklahoma City, which are about equidistance from where I'm located. A lot of bike rides, playing catch in the front yard, basketball games, uh, building a tree house. You know, we play Minecraft, so that's kind of fun as well.
Wow,
Uh,
that's awesome.
yeah, so just kind of having fun and making fun in every place that we can. That's kind of what I'm up to. That's what I'm about right now.
That's awesome, Justin. Well,
Yeah.
sir, if people want to reach out and partner with you, how can they do so?
Well, Facebook on the socials is always a good place to find me. Justin Walsh, search me up, and you'll see my profile picture. I also have a presence. I'm developing a presence on YouTube and TikTok. I'm known as the Tall Counselor. Throw Instagram in there as well, the Tall Counselor. Or you could just simply email me. I'm at justin.walsh16 at Yahoo. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, yeah. Why did you call yourself? Why is your handle the tall counselor, Justin?
Well, believe it or not, I am quite tall. I'll share a story. I was counseling a group of children. They're all siblings, but our first couple of sessions were virtual, and then just recently we met in person. And they walked into the waiting room, and they're, oh my gosh, they were kind of taken aback. I'm 6 feet 6 inches tall. I'm a former college basketball player. Uh, You'll see I hit my head on things quite often. It just goes with the territory of being 6'6". So
Yeah, yeah,
I'm tall. I'm the tall
yeah.
counselor.
Yeah, what an appropriate handle then. That's so awesome.
Yeah,
Justin, this was great. Thank you for coming on the show and sharing a little bit about your practice and yourself. And maybe we can do it again in the future. How does that sound, sir?
I'd like that. Let's do it.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Well, everybody, thanks again for joining. And until the next one, catch you later. Bye.